with homosexuality, though other crimes, we can map it out so easily statistically from state to state, where capital punishment is on the books for murder. Guess what? There's less murder.
You literally just want to kill people. You're just a freak who likes the idea of killing people. Like, let's just be honest with ourselves. Does this guy think that God's gonna come down to him and tell him to build an ark because he's going to flood the world again? Listen, okay? I love the United States of America. We tell these insane, like, murderous Christians, sorry, but the human sacrifices will stop. Chad, I got a little treat for you. I want to talk about a little guy, a little somebody by the name of, what's his name? Joel Webbon. My bad, Joel Webbon. But for this topic, for this discussion, you can call him Great Value Matt Walsh. Because he is basically Great Value Matt Walsh. He almost looks like him too. Who? He's a conservative. He's a conservative, right-wing YouTuber influencer who looks very much like Matt Walsh, who talks and acts very much like Matt Walsh, and who wants to set up a Christian theocracy in the United States. Yeah, so we do have Walsh at home. And I'm not joking when I said he's just kind of like Matt Walsh. He doesn't believe racism is a real problem. Walsh doesn't believe racism is a real problem. He doesn't like trans people. Walsh doesn't like trans people. He calls for the death penalty for gay people. This conservative is not calling sodomy an abomination as scripture explicitly says. Instead, he's calling the penalty according to God's immutable law just an abomination. And Walsh calls for the death killing his political opponents as well. I'm 100% serious that I say that the death penalty could be completely morally justified against these people. I'm telling you, they're very similar to each other. And so he's going to do the same exact thing he did in that tweet here. I just wanted to take a little look at it, listen to his opinions, and see what's going on the right side of the aisle.
You don't mess with Texas. And there was this whole, campaign and even commercials and things like that. And you would see signs, at like a state park, or on the side of the highway that says, don't mess with Texas. And that littering, just throwing a piece of trash out your car windows, you're driving down the interstate, was punishable, and it would give a maximum penalty. It would be like up to 2 years in jail and a $5,000 fine. Or I might get it backwards. It might be $2,000 fine or up to 5 years in jail. Now, here's my point. I don't personally know anybody in the state of Texas doing hard time for throwing a Coke bottle out the window. First offense. Right, exactly. Yeah. I don't know anybody who's like, we were on a road trip and I just got lackadaisical, I lost my cool, and I messed with Texas, and I threw a Coke bottle out the window, and
my
state trooper
just chucked it. There's nothing I can do.
State trooper pulled me over, and I've been in jail these past 3 years. I've got 2 years left on the sentence, doing hard time, for littering, first offense. And I use that as a humorous example, but that makes the point.
But the thing is, Joel, if there was someone who was dumping truckloads of trash on the side of the highway, then the law has
exactly teeth. So it's like, why does it even have so then why even have a maximum penalty if we're talking about something that doesn't necessitate that degree of a penalty as a first offense?
Well, because here's the thing, because usually, I'm not sure if he understands this, but it's usually either or. So if they catch you littering, they can give you either jail or a fine or both sometimes if it's really bad. The reason why you don't see people getting hit with huge littering fines is because we don't have a cop every 5 feet of every square footage of the entire United States looking for somebody who has like a McDonald's bag fly out of their window when their windows are down, when they're rolling down, like I-24 or something, That's just not what we do. It's not a crime that we police super hard, because most people aren't doing crazy amounts of littering. And if they are, then you can find them and then you can hit them with that. But I think what he's trying to get at is the point of, we should be holding people more account. It shouldn't be as easy for you to throw a Coke bottle out of your car on the highway. We need to police that harder. Yeah, that's true. The cops are too busy shooting somebody's dog to be able to stop somebody from throwing a Walmart bag out of their car on the freeway.
Well, because because people might be repeat offenders. That's why. And so, yeah, if you've got a serial litterer who is just with complete reckless abandon, just throwing Coke bottles out, and he's doing it every single day and trashing up all this stuff, and he's received citation,
remodeling his house, and he's just dumping it all on public land,
and some of it is even like certain it's chemicals and things that are harmful, and and there's been warnings, and then
you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I do think that we should have littering and environmental damage be more serious in this country, but specifically when it comes to companies, because those do the most amount of damage. I mean, there's a place in the United States that's called Cancer Alley, specifically because a plastic company keeps dumping plastic chemicals from their plastic production into the water, giving people crazy amounts of cancer all through their body, and they're too poor to leave those areas. And their children grow up with that water, and they grow up with that water, and it's very hard to be able to stop using that water. Like, you bathe in it, it gets in your eyes, it gets in your mouth at some point in time. And that's just what those people live with, and those companies are just allowed to litter and ruin people's lives and end people's lives because the government doesn't do anything about their environmental destruction. I mean, there's companies that produce crazy amounts of chemicals and toxins into the air, and they just completely get away with it. There's a reason why some parts of this country have horrible amounts of black lung and lung cancer and skin cancer and all these certain issues that could easily be dealt with if we cared more about the environment being damaged, right? But now we're talking about a guy who throws their plastic bottle out of their car when they're going to work, which is bad and does harm the environment. But these are not similar, and most people aren't doing crazy amounts of littering. Most litter that you see out there is probably garbage bags that broke, or accidents of things that have come out of flown out of their car when the windows were down, or trash cans that blew over on a windy day. That's most of the littering that we see out there, and not just people. And not just people kind of just throwing their trash into the local river. Those are companies that throw their trash into the local river. Cough, cough, Nestle. Oh no, I think I just drunk some Flint water.
There's been even citations, and he won't stop. And it's at a certain point, that guy needs to be put away. He's a threat to society. That guy needs to go to jail, and even for littering. But we're talking about reaching a certain degree. And so all that back to the civil codes given to Israel. The only crime that mandated capital punishment, the death penalty, and we see this from not just the civil law with Israel, but the Noahic covenant in Genesis chapter 9, that if someone takes another man's life, then he forfeits his own. And that's not because the Bible doesn't care about life. That's because the Bible does care about life, because life is so precious. If a life is taken, the only appropriate retribution is that by taking a life, you forfeit your own. And what does that actually do? We can map it out so easily statistically from state to state, where capital punishment is on the books for murder. Guess what? There's less murder.
Okay, actually, let's take a look at that. The death penalty does not reduce crime. It does not. The death penalty does not act as a deterrent for crime. Almost nobody who does a crime worthy of the death penalty in most states thinks that they're ever going to get caught. And if they're going to if they're really thinking about doing a crime like that, more likely than not, the penalty for it isn't going to stop them. That's just simply. I don't know if states that don't have a death penalty have more or less crime on average. I would believe that that's not true, specifically because usually the states that have really lax capital punishment laws are conservative states that have really bad crime. Because the states in this country that have the worst crime are red states because of their horrible conservative politics around community management. So why even have a death penalty? It makes people feel good. They like it when they kill somebody who did something wrong. And so that's why they like having a death penalty. It's either you believe that the death penalty is an actual genuine deterrent, even though that's not true, or it just makes you feel good when somebody gets killed for when they after they did something wrong. And that's it really. That's mostly kind of it. Usually when these types of people, when they're presented with statistics that that prove that that's not true. They either don't accept it or they accept it and they still think that they should be killed because killing is just something that should be done. The state should be executing people in their opinion, and so it doesn't really matter why. It doesn't really matter if it's useful. They don't want that person to be alive, and so they want the state to kill them, and that's just kind of it. For a lot of them, or they just deny the statistics and then go, I saw a guy who was gonna like commit a quadruple homicide, but then I showed him the state penal code that said that that is classified as mass murder, and then that they could upgrade his charge to the death penalty, and he was like, no, and he fell to his knees. Holding his AR-15, he fell to his knees. The death penalty has a worse effect if those charts are to be believed. Yo, let's take a look at this. This is crazy. Thanks for the info. Murder rate of death penalty states compared to non-death penalty states. Wow, exactly what we were looking for. That's crazy. Okay, let's see. Murder rate in death penalty. So this is death penalty states, and these are non-death penalty states. Here in 1990, the death penalty states had a higher crime rate. And let's see, 2019. Oh, look, the death penalty states. The crime rate between death penalty and non-death penalty states has only gotten wider. So now it's like 25% of a difference. 5.37 compared to 4.17 death penalty to non-death penalty states. So yeah, I don't know what information that he was looking at. I didn't know these stats off the top of my head, but I knew that the death penalty is not a deterrent statistically. We know that's not true. I don't know. This is like believing that if you put 100 people in it's like people who think that guns reduce crime. It's like, can you imagine you put 100 people in a warehouse, okay, and then you drop from the ceiling 10 guns, like it's a Squid Game, okay, like it's a singular squidded game. If we had like a control group of 100 people in a warehouse with no guns compared to 100 people in a warehouse with 5 guns, fully loaded. I think any person who's not completely stupid would understand that guns in that situation would lead to more people dying. Like anybody can believe that. Well, anybody should be able to understand that. Nah, I'd win. So true. Actually, I'd make it out of the gulag because I'd have all the guns. You see, strength, a peace through strength. But yeah, death penalty, non-death penalty. So yeah, death penalty states. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a single time in human history where the death penalty has led to less crime. Very interesting. It's almost like this guy's belief on the world that if we just keep killing people, that the world will be a better place just doesn't seem to be true. When I completely lied to my audience.
So it actually is pro-life. It preserves life by having this high penalty to ensure that this heinous crime is not committed. And so with homosexuality, though other crimes, not so murder. Mandated capital punishment. Other crimes, because if you're reading through Leviticus, you're like, it's like, well, everything. It seems like everything has the death penalty. You just die for everything in Israel. Well, that's not true. Like if a child strikes his father and mother, then he would get the death penalty. Well, the Jewish historians have looked through. There's not one case. So you were saying there was only 8 to 10 of in early America of a homosexual getting the death penalty. In Israel, there's not even one case that we can find of a child being put to death for dishonoring his father and mother and striking them. It's just a blatant dishonor.
So just to be completely clear here, just so you understand. He's now advocating for gay people to be put to death because he believes that the Bible says he believes in old post-canon Israel. He believes that because God gave those strict laws to post-canon Israel, directly post-canon Israel in the Levant, that we need to now have the death penalty the same way that ancient Israel had the death penalty as well, which would mean that in his opinion, we would, if that was the case, if we're going to go by like those old Israeli laws, we would have to start doing animal sacrifices. I think it would be the death penalty to not observe the Sabbath, like Sunday. That might be the death penalty as well. Like as he said before, like if a kid hits their parents, we would have to kill them as well. Illegal to eat shellfish and other types of fish as well. it just doesn't make any sense to me, because like all of this is really stupid. Like this whole thing, this whole conversation is very stupid. And not only just from like a secular point of view, but from a religious point of view, it's also very stupid. We don't live under old Israeli law. We don't live under ancient Israeli law. Like if you're a Christian today, we don't live under old Israeli law. We just don't. Those laws were put in place for old Israel from a religious standpoint. But before the construction, specifically to keep them pure from the pagans and the polytheistic Egyptians. But like Israel these days doesn't abide by those laws. We don't abide by those laws because those laws were finished. They were done. Like this makes no sense to me, because if you are a Christian, you should simply understand the concept of the new covenant. Like there was the old covenant, like there's an old covenant in the Old Testament where it's all like death and thunder and lightning, very frightening. You get put to death for literally everything. Everybody gets killed for every reason. If you blink twice incorrectly on the Sabbath, without blessing your food correctly, you get put to death. Yeah, like all of this, even all of that was true in those laws, but all of those laws got done away with because we don't live in the era of law anymore. If you're a Christian, you live in the era of faith right now. And the new covenant in the new covenant, as opposed to the old covenant, is written on your heart and not written in stone. Like that's supposed to be the whole point of it. And so I don't even understand these conversations on like Exodus and Leviticus, and Genesis. These just don't make any sense to me, because we don't live under almost any of these. We don't live under almost any of these laws anymore. Specifically when it comes to the new covenant in the New Testament. If you're just like a Christian, and if you're like a Jewish, I think you live by some of them. But if you're a Christian, no, this doesn't even make any sense. You just read. It's just like they completely forgot the whole like, but Jesus came part of being a Christian, which kind of blows my mind, right? Like, isn't that kind of crazy? You forget they read the Old Testament and they completely forget about the whole like, but then there was Jesus part, like the after that part, right? Does this guy think that God's gonna come down to him and tell him to build an ark because he's going to flood the world again? I'm just gonna be honest with you. This kind of seems a little ridiculous. The New Testament and the New Covenant is absolutely God's DLC patch, and it's a great one at that.
Regard is because it's a maximum penalty, and so there probably were not repeat offenders. And then number two, there were probably few offenders in that particular crime even to begin with. Why? Right. Because of the threat of the maximum penalty that restrains, right? It's like people would do more evil if they knew they could do it with impunity. Right. Mm-hmm. But by seeing, there's a penalty and it's a strict one, that keeps evil at bay. Still.
Yeah, this is just a thought that goes through people who like the idea of killing people. But this has just never been borne out that the death penalty is an accurate way to stop people from committing a crime in just a normal society. It's just never been true. It's not true. It wasn't true in canon. It wasn't true in the kingdoms of Judea and Jerusalem. It wasn't true in Israel. It wasn't true at any point in time. Then it wasn't true in Rome. It wasn't true in the United States. Today, it's just never been. You literally just want to kill people. You're just a freak who likes the idea of killing people. Like, let's just be honest with ourselves. Like, a cursory search about any of these topics could tell you quickly that you are simply just incorrect. Like, we didn't search long to find out that he's just insane. He's just crazy. I'm sorry, people who want to commit crimes, they really just go and do them, more likely than not.
Still evil at the level of the heart. We need gospel preaching to change the heart, but it absolutely restrains outward manifestations of evil. And so as you're thinking through, well, man, Leviticus is just, # based, my goodness, like Leviticus goes hard.
Yeah, once again, he's saying hashtag based to killing gay people. This is I'm so surprised that YouTube still allows this on their channel. That YouTube still allows this on their platform. Or I guess it's
killing fascists.
Listen. POV, I'm 18 on the beaches of Normandy in the 1940s. So true in that one very specific context. So true in that one very specific context when I'm a American 18-year-old getting loaded off of the Allied boats on the beaches of Normandy. Yeah, I'm really surprised that YouTube just allows this, but he might not be that big. And I'm telling you guys, this is something that I need to say every once in a while. But this is something I say a decent amount, and I want to say it more. You guys need to start reporting. I know a lot of you guys don't hit the report button, and on Twitter, it doesn't really mean anything anymore. There's like, you only get reported now for saying that you like gay people, and you only get your account deleted for that. You don't get your account deleted for almost literally anything else, right? Like the guy who posted CP, like on his Twitter account that Elon follows still has his account. And so if that's the case, then I completely imagine that almost everybody else will have and keep their accounts as well. So that doesn't matter there, but on YouTube and on Instagram, on Facebook, they're the platforms that still are not genuinely insane. You should be reporting these types of videos as much as you can. I'm not telling you to go find people's videos and attack them, but you should absolutely report when you personally feel that somebody has said something that breaks TOS, because this person is saying over and over and over again how much they want to give gay people the death penalty because they read in the Old Testament that gay people deserve the death penalty. That there's no other way to describe it. He's saying it himself over and over again. I'm not inferencing here. He even mentioned it by name specifically. And they want to try and like pass this off as only them being like religious, and you would be discriminating against them to say that they're wrong when it's just not true. Not only do we not live under not only do we not live under the old covenant and the old rules for ancient for ancient Israel, it's just morally wrong. You're simply just a bad person. You're morally wrong to believe that you should be executing people for that reason, for that opinion. It is anti-Christian. It is anti-moral. It's anti-human. And you shouldn't be. And it's just a horrible thing to believe. I think any normal person can understand this. But this is the world that these types of people want. Like, remember when these people come to you and they say that they want a sort of like more biblical world where they believe that the world should be ran by the Bible. This is what they're talking about. This is why people call them Al-Qaeda. Okay, because they're way closer to Al-Qaeda and ISIS than any other political group in the country right now. They are almost in complete lockstep. There's a reason for when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and then terrorists started to take over towns when the Afghan army started to collapse. That specifically Tucker Carlson came out in support of that, because he believed that we were exporting wokeness into Afghanistan, and our anti-biblical rules are leading people to want to be terrorists more. And so that's why they should be able to reestablish super strict form of Sharia in Afghanistan, specifically because it's way better than having women go and get an education or being more tolerant to wokeness and gay people and minorities being in the country. And this is something that conservatives have been telling us over and over again. Conservatives help fund a movement that ultimately succeeded in Uganda to get homosexuality and gay sex to be a crime punishable by death. These people support this worldwide. They're literally exporting terrorism and terror on marginalized communities across the world. This is what these people do. They export terror. They export death to other countries, and then get angry when the US does like the one thing good when we're in other countries, which is like promote people to be more tolerant and less racist, and less bigoted. And that's the time that's the only time when they get upset. It's super strange. It's really disgusting. I don't know. This must have been. It's exactly these types of people try to hide their beliefs, but behind the sort of a less moralistic. Oh, this is just how the world works. Scientific stupidity, or I guess like religious stupidity here, to try to pass it off as like a legitimate form of understanding the world. I think is disgusting.
Yes, it does, but it is important in understanding the case law system and general equity theonomy and a maximum penalty for repeat offenders. Right? If you got somebody who sleeps with another man, and there's witnesses, that's the other thing. There would have to be 2 or 3 witnesses, not just hearsay. They had to actually see it occur, or the person gives their own confession. And even then, it didn't necessarily mean the death penalty. It could.
Well, and to your point,
what is this cope? Well, listen, the gays got their chances. I mean, we had to have a couple witnesses, but once we did, like, sorry, homo, you're going on the cross. Like, what is it? What are you saying? Mods? Witnesses? Yeah, you gotta watch.
Shooting from memory here, but I believe in a few of the cases it was bestiality was involved, and then maybe possibly rape as well.
Right. Yep.
So,
or even pedophilia.
Yeah.
Things like that.
So keep in your mind, we're going to get into the stats. I mean, some of these are in the tens of thousands of children molested.
That's what I wanted to lay the groundwork for. Exactly.
I preempted you. Suicide?
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of people committing suicide because of this lifestyle. So you have maybe 50 people executed for this versus the damage we've had now. Which one is more merciful?
Right.
Oh my gosh. Wait, this is insane. So gay people commit suicide. And in his mind, the suicide is because they're so stinky and gay. So instead of to save gay people from killing themselves, instead what we need to do is kill the gay people in his mind first, or threaten to kill them for being gay, and then that'll give them a reason to live. What even is there to say? It's so outside of the realm of what a sane human being would say. This must have been what it was like. Must have been what it was like to live in like the Levant and see a burning bush and it says "Be not afraid." Well, it was the scariest thing in your entire existence. Yeah, like literally caveman people. My question is, how are you supposed to run a civil society with people like this running around? I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm way more in favor of throwing these types of people in jail than allowing them to have votes and vote for executing minorities because they don't like them. And because they don't like them and they believe that threatening to execute them for loving a fellow consenting adult is worth the death penalty. Like, there's a reason why this government here in the United States was made specifically to get away from these types of people. Like, the Pilgrims moved specifically to get away from these types of people in their mind, right? Like the people who want to grab power and then persecute and kill people who are different from them. Like, the whole basis of this country of like freedom from oppression from religion to be able to practice and live the way you want is completely usurped by people like this who claim to be real Americans. There's the values that we rest upon for a civil society is something that they literally cannot engage with. Like, these are the types of people who get angry when brown people come into the country and they vote for like a Democrat and say that they don't understand the country. Well, these people are having a conversation. Like, I would imagine Jeffrey Dahmer would have a conversation with his fellow serial killer cannibal friend over like how good their next door neighbor tasted after they cooked them into a stew. Right? It's a sort of eerie discomfort that you get for seeing something just genuinely evil. right? Like seeing somebody whose brain works in a way that genuinely scares you. Like looking at these people is like watching a serial killer documentary to me. Like we can't, like there's a reason why we make laws to, like, there's a reason why we have an entire constitution of immutable rights that these people cannot usurp and take down. This is exactly what it's like to walk into your kitchen at night and flick on the lights and watch like roaches crawl back under the fridge. You know what I mean? Like it's, you now become knowledgeable that something disgusting is living in your house and you might not be able to get rid of all of them. Right? It's like knowing that you have an this must be like in like Aliens. This must have been how they felt in Aliens when they realized that they had like a man-eating creature living on the ship that is trying to kill them constantly.
Was the way God said that?
Before we get there, though, and before we go to our first break, I want to get to the last thing of groundwork that I'm trying to lay. So the Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania thought God was inhumane. Briefly, there was a very influential political thinker and philosopher at the time, Montesquieu. He was French, and he influenced the founding fathers in a lot of ways. But he objected specifically to the death penalty for sodomy, not because he said God is inhumane to execute people. The Quakers just thought that was God. We can't execute anyone. That's cruel. He said it's disproportionate. So he said, God, of course, God could have us execute whomever, but it doesn't fit the crime. Disproportional punishment. That was Montesquieu, the French philosopher. He's actually the one. The French, yeah. But before you get too close there, or too far there, he's the one that kind of systematized the idea of separation of powers. The three branches of government, removing power from a central place. And so
that also sounds French.
The founding fathers relied on a lot of his ideas for separation of powers. Anyway, my point is, think about America and where we are now and these two ideas. God is inhumane to do what he has said, or it's disproportionate. It's unreasonable to punish someone. We think of now crimes for theft or shoplifting or murder. Well, he had a bad childhood. It would be unreasonable to punish him for these things. These two ideas that started in the 1600s in America of God being mean and God being unreasonable have, I think, really bubbled through the American ethos and really kind of have come to define our perspective of who God is.
And you're saying the Quakers were somewhat pivotal in that?
Maybe they just didn't like the idea of you guys saying that everybody deserves the death penalty constantly. And that they don't, and that, listen, here's the thing. Live your own life. If this guy right here, Joel, if he accidentally has gay sex one day, I don't agree with it, I'll say. He has the opportunity to just kill himself after that. Like I said, I don't agree with it. I don't think he should. But he could just try that, okay? He could just do that if he so chooses. If he thinks that being gay deserves the death penalty, right? But you can't kill somebody else. You can kill yourselves. Go knock yourself out if that's like something that you want to do. Check out the suicide hotline first, in my opinion. But you can't force your way of living on other people. No. You can do it yourself. Yourself, but you can't do it to other people. You can't force that on other people. They have to live the way they want. And if you don't believe that, then one day a whole nother group of people could move here to the United States, or a whole nother group of people can think differently. And then what if the Rainbow Mafia finally get complete control of the United States and then rule that being homophobic is worth the death penalty? And that law gets put into place that if you are found homophobic, they just end you right there on the spot. I don't think he would sit here and be like, well, I mean, that's the law of the land. That's the law of the land. That's just how we do things here. No, you wouldn't. Absolutely not. You're like, wait, no, we should be killing people for other reasons. Wait, no. The death penalty thing isn't that cool anymore. He's genuinely insane. These are crazy people. This is the type of guy who would be going to like witch burnings. He'd take his lunch break and go watch some witch burnings by the local creek. This guy is insane. You can do whatever you want to yourself. You can't kill other people. Listen, okay? I love the United States of America. We tell these insane, like murderous Christians, sorry, but the human sacrifices will stop. I'm sorry, as a Christian, you're not going to be allowed. As a Christian myself, you're not going to be allowed. We're going to make a country where you're not allowed to sacrifice minorities to God. That's just not happening. That's not going to happen in this country. I'm sorry. Sorry, but the murderous theocracy will stop. I know that makes them really upset, but the murderous theocracy will stop and it's not coming back.
They were extremely pivotal in the inhumane part.
That checks out.
Yep.
So they thought God's law is cruel, capricious, and we can be more merciful than God.
And then this other guy, and then the French philosopher said it's disproportionate. God's going.
Yeah, man. Remember, throw the first stone. Remember when he who is without sin throw the first stone? If any of you guys are sinless, go ahead and try. But not in my America. You might be able to get away with that in like a more backwater country like Ethiopia. Okay, you might be able to get away with that on like a smaller, worse country. But here in the United States, we don't run on a theocracy. I'm sorry. If you want that, then you are more than happy to move to some insane third world country that's struggling. And I'm sure that they can give you the life that you want.